This is Into the Story, the podcast where you learn English with true stories from all over the world. Stories that connect us and inspire you to get where you want to go. Hi there, it's Bree. Welcome to this conversation episode of Into the Story. This podcast is all about learning through the experiences of other people by listening to them tell a true story from their life. But in these bonus episodes, I take you behind the scenes. I ask my guests questions about their lives that give us insight into who they are and how they communicate. Today, I'm sharing my conversation with Lucy Harvey. If you missed last week's episode, Finding Joy, I highly recommend that you go back and take a listen. In today's conversation, there are a few spoilers. So Lucy was a costume stylist in London, and she is now the producer and director of the critically acclaimed documentary Alien on Stage. In this conversation, we talk about the power of trusting yourself and how to deal with criticism, whether in creative work or just life in general. Lucy also shares some simple but powerful habits that help her stay focused and connected. But before we get to the conversation, last week I mentioned this idea that really stuck with me. And it's that everything that we achieve in life comes from a conversation with other people. Think about it. Whether it's building relationships, finding opportunities, job opportunities especially, or just sharing our ideas, communication is at the center of all of it. And that is why I want to share a very simple but brilliant framework called TALK. If you've signed up for my newsletter, you've already seen this framework, but today I wanted to take you through it in more detail. So, TALK was developed by Harvard professor Alison Wood Brooks, who studies what makes conversations enjoyable. And it comes down to these four things, TALK. The first one is topics. So to have a good conversation, Alison recommends preparing a few topics before you're going into a conversation. And maybe you're thinking right now that preparing topics is going to make you sound very unnatural. But actually, I believe that the opposite is true. Having a few ideas in mind before you start a conversation with someone helps the conversation flow naturally. So here's something that you can try. Before your next, let's say, work meeting or maybe a social event, I want you to think of 3 interesting things that you could bring up, that you could talk about. Maybe it's something that you learned recently, or perhaps something strange that happened to you that day, or even a question like, what's the best thing that happened to you this week? Having a few topics is a great way to start a conversation and to help it flow naturally. Okay, so that is the T from talk. The next is A, asking. Most of us think that we ask a lot of questions, but research shows that we actually ask far fewer than we should. And here's the magic. People love talking about themselves. They love being asked questions. So here's a small shift that can make a big difference. The next time that you're in a conversation, ask one more question before changing the subject. For example, if someone says, I just got back from a trip in Canada, instead of saying, oh, that's cool, you could ask them, what was your favorite part of Canada? It's such a simple thing, but it really does make conversations more engaging and more interesting. So that is the A, asking. The next is L, and L is for levity. Okay, levity is lightness. It's making a conversation light. You know those people who are just fun to talk to, it's not because they have the most interesting stories. It's because they bring warmth, they bring energy, they bring almost a little bit of playfulness or curiosity into a conversation. And the best part of this is that you don't need to be a comedian to do this. Trust me. Just smiling, using a friendly tone, especially making a very lighthearted comment can totally shift the energy in a conversation. So the next time that you meet someone new, start the conversation with a smile and a positive comment. So bringing that lightness. Okay, that is the L. And the final one is kindness. So the best communicators are not the ones who talk the most. They are the ones who make others feel heard. They're the ones who make the other people feel like they are being listened to. And the simplest way to do that is to show that you are listening. So the next time you're in a conversation, bring up something the other person mentioned earlier. For example, you said that you love photography. What kind of photos do you take? So, bringing something up, showing that you were listening to earlier in the conversation. And something even more powerful is to bring something up from earlier in your relationship. For example, imagine that you have a work colleague and you remember the last time that you saw them, the last work meeting, for example, they were talking about going to their daughter's soccer game. What you can do is say, "Oh, I remember you saying that you went to the soccer game. How did it go?" The only thing that you're doing here is showing that you're listening, you're paying attention to that person. So this is the kindness. Okay, now it is your turn to talk. So this is your challenge. I want you to pick one of these areas: topics, asking, levity or lightness, or kindness. And I want you to try this in your next conversation. Small shifts like this, small changes practiced over time really can have a huge impact on how we connect with others. This is the kind of thing that I share on my newsletter. So if you are ready to become a better communicator, you can sign up for free at intothestorypodcast.com. Okay, now let's get into my conversation with Lucy. Do you listen to podcasts or read books, or where do you get your inputs from?
Oh, podcasts.
Podcasts?
Yeah. I love listening to podcasts. It's very difficult to read books now. I have a 2-year-old.
Mhm.
Um I yeah, I do what I need to do whilst listening to podcasts. That's really satisfying.
And what's something that's inspiring you right now, or something that you're enjoying that you're listening to?
The telepathy tapes, I'm sure everybody said that because
No.
it outrated Joe Rogan at some point. So the world's listening to the telepathy tapes, but this is very exciting for me because it kind of aligns with certain values and things that I learned through my experience of making the film, that there's some kind of higher connection. There's something that connects us all that we can't see, and there's an intelligence that we need to tap into that's there, that's part of our consciousness. And I like the idea. I just like the concept that we have extrasensory perceptions. And I feel like the energy that people feel watching our film kind of taps into an extrasensory perception that it makes us feel connected. This is like experiencing something on the electromagnetic spectrum that is there, but we're not fully aware of.
Hmm.
So, yeah, that's why I like the telepathy tapes.
Telepathy tapes. Okay. And do you have any habits? I know right now you have a young child. It can be difficult to have any sort of morning routine, so I won't ask you what's your morning routine, but do you have any habits that kind of help you stay connected or focused or creative? You can pick any one of those words. Is there any habit that you have that you're like, this is a non-negotiable for me. This is something I have to do to be sane?
Yeah, grounding and sauna.
Okay.
Going in the sauna is really beneficial. It reduces what's it's it's scientifically proven to reduce depression as well as improving circulation, and just it's a kind of panacea for all things. So having an opportunity to go in a sauna is really important for me.
Mhm.
Taking off my shoes and putting them on the ground, that that really makes a difference. Getting enough daylight, that's so important for me.
Mhm.
And yeah, trying to carve out just some space to be on my own, that's super important as well.
Yeah. And what is the worst piece of advice that you have ever been given?
Oh my goodness. I I had people close to me that didn't believe I should make the film, that it wasn't worth doing, that there was too many risks involved, that we weren't able to do it properly, um, that we should pay for a proper editor. Like, just we were advised to sort of hand it over to people who know what they're doing.
Mm.
And that was terrible advice because it had to be a personal what's the word? I don't know. I just believe that we had such a personal connection to their story that it was our business to make the best of it because we truly love them. And I think if we handed this over to anybody else who was a professional, they wouldn't have given it the same treatment, and maybe it wouldn't resonate with people the way it had.
That's really interesting, bad advice saying, no, leave it to the professionals. You've done your
Yeah,
part. And instead, you said, no, maybe I don't have the same skill as a professional editor, but I have something else that can't be seen or
yeah,
touched. It's something more important.
yes,
And especially with this documentary and your story, it's all about this thing of to love, of amateur,
yeah,
of,
exactly. And I really appreciate the reviews who see that and make a comment that, the spirit behind the camera is the same as the spirit in front of the camera, and that the amateur people who made the film made it with love. And occasionally there'll be the odd review of somebody saying, good story, bad doc, or don't they know how to operate a camera, or the sound was a bit off. And I'm like, well, if you think that's important, then you've really missed the point.
yeah, there's like, it is a little bit cliche or oversaid, but you really can't make everyone happy. And the moment that
No,
you put something that you've created out into the public domain, you lose control of
yeah,
it, right? And you just have to focus on the process of
yeah,
doing the best you can, and people will receive it as they receive it.
exactly. I think, sorry, just to say,
No.
I just think when I see reviews where someone's criticizing the skill of the audio or the skill of the camera work, I just think, well, so are you saying that we should never have made the film? Therefore, you'll never get to see this story because we had decided that we don't have the ability that's up to your standards. So, therefore, we shouldn't make this film because we were the only people there to capture it at that time. So,
Yeah.
we did what we had to do with the skill we've got. And now you've got the results that you have. Like, if you can't accept that, then you're missing the point.
But I think that's like with everything that anyone can do in their life. Um,
Yeah.
if you've said, okay, I'm going to do this when it's perfect, you wouldn't do anything.
Yes.
I look
No,
back at the
exactly.
few things that I've created, and maybe I don't love the product, and I listen to my technique of speaking or the audio sound or whatever it is, but that got me to where I am now, a little bit further down the road, a little bit more experience, and also a lot of things that have been
Yeah.
created have been put out there by amateurs, and they're beautiful, and they contribute to art.
Yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
Exactly. It just seems a waste of energy to point out the thing that's wrong with it. You're like, well, we can't change that. So what's the point of you saying that?
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for coming on, Lucy. I really enjoyed hearing your story and having this conversation with you. I really enjoyed this conversation with Lucy. I hope that you did too. It reminds us that we do not need to be perfect to start. In fact, if we wait until we're perfect to start something, we have waited way too long. I just wanted to take a moment to say thank you. I recently received an email from a listener, Tao, who shared how much Into the Story has meant to her. She talked about how the stories that I share on this podcast have helped her through big life changes, inspired her to be braver, and of course, help improve her English. Messages like this remind me why I do this podcast, and I am so grateful to all of you who listen each week. If Into the Story has made an impact on you, I would love if you could support this podcast by sharing your favorite episode with a friend or by leaving a review on your favorite podcast app. Your reviews help more people find the show and be inspired by these amazing stories. That is it for this bonus episode. I will be back next week with another incredible story. Until then, I hope that you have a good time, or at least a good story to tell.